All right, guys. This is my first video in a while, so we're gonna take it just off the top of the head. Really, we're just gonna talk through it. Yeah, Tom Thibodeau fired by the New York Knicks. We're just gonna walk through it. I'm a Knicks fan, so if you think there are any biases in here, hopefully I weed them out. I like to think I weed out my biases. Hopefully they're gone, and if not, feel free to let me know anyway. But look, I analyze sports for a living, I guess. I'm a sports bettor. I do sports analyzing just in general. And I follow the NBA quite heavily. And yeah, we'll talk about Tom Thibodeau. Now, he's fired today. In terms of expecting it, didn't quite expect it today. The firing itself is not super unexpected. It came a lot earlier than I thought about. And with the other playoff stuff still going on, it kind of came at an awkward time. In terms of just expecting it in general, a little bit. Tom Thibodeau is an interesting coach. He is a great regular season coach. I think his best spot is like a team that's ranked like in their conference from like 10 to 12. And then just kind of working like a team that's ready to kind of take that next step into playoff contention. That's, I think, is his best spot. He's going to play starters more. They're going to do what they can to, win games every night. And that's what you want when you're kind of making that next step, is, winning more games, starters playing more minutes, and doing what you can to get in there. Once it gets to the playoffs, it's a bit of a different animal. And because he does the starter thing, he doesn't get to necessarily try out other lineups, doesn't necessarily get to see what's on his bench as much, that sort of stuff. So it kind of gets a little bit finicky, and it kind of gets a little bit tight with how his rotations can be going into the playoffs and switching during playoff series, as we kind of saw with the Indiana series. That's trademark Tom Thibodeau, really, how this playoff series went. Now they beat the Pistons. That was a very coin flip series. A lot of games came right down to the end of it. And coin flip, that's how it goes. Next series, they did win that series, but I mean, we're talking 2 or 3 extra made shots by the Celtics and it going 4-1 the other way. Like, that's how that was. Again, they won the series, nothing to take away from that, but just minute to minute in that series, it was a lot closer than the way it ended. It ended 4-2. It was probably more of a 4-2 kind of Celtics type of series, and it played that way. And credit to Thibs for figuring out the rotations around the outside and figuring out how to keep Boston from scoring, from 120 altogether, and doing well there, and he certainly did that. And then we get to the Pacers series, and this is kind of where things fall apart a little bit. They should win that opening game. Don't. One of those Pacer miracles. They've had 3 or 4 of those in this offseason or this postseason already. They've done one to each team. They did one to Milwaukee, did one to Cleveland, did one to the Knicks, and that kind of set things up because Pacers are a good team, and when they're not efficient on offense, you got to beat them. They weren't super efficient that night till really, really late, and found a way to steal that. They lose game 2, come back in game 3, but it was more of like a way from behind comeback. 20 points down, did that twice to the Celtics, and then you felt things get kind of out of hand late game 2, early game 3, despite winning game 3. And despite winning game 5, you kind of felt the rotations being off a little bit and them having to try stuff. And I think, to back Thibs here a little bit, I think it's kind of difficult with the way the Knicks roster is set up. Brunson and Cat defensively being on the court at the same time, really, really difficult to work around. Really difficult to work around those two being on the court at the same time defensively. And politically, just like not actual politics, but just like inside the locker room politics, ownership politics, all that stuff, it's difficult to get, to the second, get to the semifinals, Eastern Conference Finals, and look everybody in the eye and say, these two can't play together. If we want to win this series, someone's got to sit on the bench. Somebody's got to come off the bench, that sort of stuff. And I understand from a fan's perspective, you're just like, you just got to do what you can to win. I don't think it's that simple. I don't think it's ever that simple when you've got stars and money and all that floating around on a team, especially a game that's got 5 dudes on the court at the same time. Cat's making however much, Brunson's making however much. These are all good players making a bunch of money, and we're late in the season, all eyes on you, and that's not the time to go ahead and say, we got to change this now, we got to do this now. So I understand it from a fan's perspective, where you kind of just want to go out, do what you can to win. I understand it from a Thibs perspective in terms of just playing them together. I understand that he did his best probably to switch around some lineups and move some different things around. I also think he did it because he had to, because the regular 5 weren't going as well, and those lineups with Brunson and Brunson and Cat on the floor at the same time were just not meshing well enough defensively. It's easy to pick on, especially for such an efficient team like Indiana, and the turnovers weren't good, and a variety of things happened that lost them the series. I don't think the Knicks match up super well with Indiana. I don't think there was much Tom personally could have done to win that series in the confines of the things he had. But also Tom has always had these shortcomings, and that's not, well, I suppose it's his fault, but it's also not something that's really, really going to change from now on. And Tom Thibodeau, I think, has sort of run his course. So that's why I wasn't super surprised here. I was more surprised at the timing. I wasn't surprised, period. And I think as fans in particular, I think there should be more openness to what's happening here. I mean, you can kind of look at it in other sports. Like Tottenham is a really good example of what's happening here, where I personally don't think Ange is that good of a manager over there at Tottenham, but they won a knockout tournament, and now he may stay and kind of just paper over the cracks a little bit. And I think that's what stuff like that does. And I think if the Knicks would have just gone out 4-1 to the Celtics or 4-2 to the Celtics, kind of like that series played to me, if that would have just happened and Thibodeau would have been gone, I don't think there would be too much worry here. I don't think it would be that big of a deal, much more big of a deal. You won't get Stephen A. Smith, freaking out on ESPN type stuff. But because they beat Boston finally, and the team's built to beat Boston, you get to this finals here, and it kind of all falls apart, and it never really felt good. It felt good for the first 3 quarters and 10 minutes of the conference finals, and then after that game being blown, game 1, it never felt good. It felt always like, there's kind of a gap here, and I think that's kind of unfair to look at it that way, because I thought there was a gap in the Celtics series personally. But as fans, I think I would like fans being more open to the idea of looking at their team and looking at their season more than just how it ends in terms of personnel changes, all that stuff. A player could have a really bad year, and then all of a sudden he's got a good playoffs, and it's why are we moving this guy? We shouldn't be moving him. Same with the coach, manager, whatever it may be. So I think fans in general should just be more open to movement like this. That being said, kind of surprising timing, but again, not super surprised it happened. It's an interesting dilemma. I think Tibbs has his place in the NBA. I don't think Tibbs is a bad coach. He's just not to the probably championship standard, and maybe Tibbs is just taking them as far as they can go, or as far as he can take them, which is perfectly okay. And I imagine if you're a Knicks fan, Tibbs has a nice place there. You don't feel negatively about Tibbs. I don't speak for everybody, but I don't necessarily feel negatively. He came in when they were not good, and they worked their way up to being competitive, and Now it's time to take that championship step. And Tibbs is more of a non-competitive to competitive playoff type team or playoff type coach. And now it's time to get right above that. And Tibbs is not going anywhere. I assume he'll find a job in a team in a similar spot who wants to just take that next step from in the lottery all the time to, 6, 7, 8 seed playoffs. And that's where I think he fits. As for the Knicks, in terms of new coaches, I'm not exactly sure where they go. My immediate thought when he got fired was Mike Malone. My immediate thought was that they probably have whoever they have lined up. Like, I would expect that done this week. Personally, I have a hard time believing that they fired Tibbs now and then didn't have any due diligence done and weren't ready, and just fired him and didn't do anything there and kind of just went about it that way. I'd be pretty surprised if that were the case. That being said, it could be the case. That happens all the time with organizations who are just not prepped. They just fire guys and aren't ready to move on. But my assumption is that they have someone lined up, and sometime soon that person gets announced and he's already been talked to and all that stuff, or they've at least started interviewing people and doing stuff like that. So we'll see. My gut feeling again was Mike Malone. We'll see. I think that's a really good fit for Mike Malone. Similar roster construction in terms of just how he plays basketball and the X's and O's side. And I think Mike Malone has obviously won a title. And basketball is interesting because everyone's immediate reaction is, wow, you had Jokic, or like with Kerr, wow, you had Steph and Clay and Durant and stuff. You're not going to win the NBA. You're not going to win the NBA championship without any of that stuff most of the time. So I don't have a problem with that. And I don't think Mike Malone was carried to anything. And I think Mike Malone's a very good coach. And I think he's the best coach available for sure. So we'll see. And now that the Knicks, we'll see. I'm not sure what the Knicks have in pull. Like I hear that a lot. Do the Knicks even have pull anymore here? I think competitive coaches in particular are more interested in just competitive teams. Like championship coaches would be more interested in competitive teams, and there's less interest in what the nightlife is, all that kind of stuff like you get with players who want to play, help their brand, play in the bigger markets, all that stuff. So I think it's less of that. And I think Mike Malone ends up being the guy, but we'll see. We'll talk about it later on. But yeah, just my quick thoughts. It's better than, writing them out on Twitter or whatever. I think I'll do more of these. It's better than writing them out on Twitter and stuff like that. But yeah, Tom Thibodeau fired, and the Knicks have some work to do.